All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is RFIDiggity. I'm Fran Brown. I'm a partner at Bishop Fox, a security firm that helps companies secure their networks and applications. I got some pretty fun stuff for you here today. I was just mixing it up at the end there a little bit and adding some of the newer slides to the beginning, just to front load a little bit, because I realized in looking at the abstract, I kind of took on a lot of things. So just in case we don't get to everything, we'll at least go over some of the new stuff as well. New. Okay, so I got some bad news and good news, but the good news trumps the bad news, so it's okay. For those of you that noticed in the abstract that it said that it would be giving out 100 circuit boards for the new backdoor version of the Tastic RFID Thief, I didn't get it in time to get it printed for this, but it's probably for the best. I don't know how many of you guys were here when we did it 2 years ago, but it was basically like a madhouse. Like, I think like 3 people got stabbed, like crawling over each other. One woman gave birth. It was just like pandemonium, like people crawling to get to the circuit board. So that's for the better. But the good news that trumps that, if you stick around to the end, at the very end, and remind me in case I don't say it, I'm going to throw up an email, and the first 100 people that email me with their physical address, I will mail the circuit boards once they come into them. And I'll send you random letters as well, love letters and, things like that. If it's risk versus reward. So I will, but you have to stick around to the end. So the first 100 items in my inbox will get one mailed out to them pretty soon. I'm going to go over kind of a little bit of logical order some of these RFID issues, but in the beginning here, just to kick things off, I kind of want to highlight a few of the newer tools. So with this talk, what I want to do is, in doing research for this, to do practical penetration tests, and I've always had the issue of you have to read, like 100 things before you get to the answer that you want. So this is to be the best of tools and techniques and what you need to know as a pen tester for doing RFID hacking. In this case, HF and UHF. And there's a few new tools as well, in addition to some of the best in the breed. So I mentioned that I was creating and it's getting pretty popular right now. I saw at Black Hat, the guys released the BLE key. Are you guys in here? Guys that did the BLE key? Yeah? Oh, yeah? All right, cool. So it's something similar to that, and we've seen some things before as well, but basically weaponizing the Tastic circuit board to be a man-in-the-middle device that, instead of weaponizing a reader, how many people have seen my last talk? I'm assuming a lot, or if you're in here, they're interested in RFID. So basically, I created this circuit board to weaponize a reader, and it just reads the reader standard input. And I realized afterwards that, hey, you can make it actually as a backdoor device as well. And instead of putting it in your own reader, you creep up at 3 in the morning to the building that you're trying to break into and pop the lid off a reader and plant it in there instead and close it. And it can capture badge values as they get them by just actually tapping into the wires. So I was like, okay, I have basically what I need already. Like, this goes into a reader, this reads it, this Tastic circuit board. If only I could make it smaller and maybe hook up Bluetooth to it or something like that. And then I was like, oh, we shrunk. Or how many of you guys are familiar with RFIDiggity? I was looking and I was like, let me see. They're like, we shrunk the Arduino and we added Bluetooth capability. I was like, that is exactly what I'm looking for. Awesome. That made it a lot easier. So I'll be releasing the schematics, basically a much stripped down version, just using this RFIDiggity without the SD card to make it small and that you can plant into any reader. Quickly going through a few other things that are new. I'll get into more detail on them. We were just in a blog post on this, but as we'll see, some of the traditional RFID hacking techniques involve trying to secretly walk by somebody and steal their badge information, make a fake copy of their badge, and then break into a building. Some of the newer technologies for RFID, physical security anyway, like iClass, there have been some flaws in them that allowed people to continue this type of attack. But eventually, we have to imagine people are going to get their act together And eventually, it'll be no longer a viable target to go into Starbucks and walk by somebody and steal their badge, in which case we're going to have to start attacking the readers and the controllers directly, which is all the readers. And basically, we're just coming up with a few queries here. In Shodan, I literally just put in 3 queries that just sticking around with it, and found a few hundred controllers exposed to the internet. And basically, if you guys are familiar with these controllers at all, if you have network connection to them at all, it's game over. There's basically, they have default credentials that they can't change of root and pass username. And if you change it, it actually breaks the product. So if you have network connectivity at all to any of these controllers, you basically own their physical security system. And they're not supposed to be hooked up to the internet, but it seems like quite a few people have, especially a lot of universities. So you can, basically start closing and open the doors and things like that over the internet there, with just a handful of Shodan queries. Or how many of you guys have seen any of my RFIDiggity research before? Only a few people? Okay, the origins of the Diggity name. Basically, this is Search Diggity, and one of the tools in it is Shodan Diggity, which allows you to just hook up to the API for Shodan and quickly do some queries. So we see a few of them here. No, you can't really see me. One other thing I should mention is that basically my slide decks are like the notes sections are like white papers. So if you ever want to follow up on any of these things, if you download the slides, the notes sections have links to every resource and well documented. I try to cite most people for their tools actually in the slide, but at the very least, if you guys are looking to follow up on this stuff, the notes of the slides are a great resource for that. So using that, just ran it, and basically these guys have Telnet and FTP, and they have a nice web interface open for, I believe this was for a college dorm. But basically, this took me all of 2 seconds to put this together, and quickly found them in Shodan, and just by browsing to them, if you actually mouse over any of the doors, it gives you a pop-up of the last valid badge what you can see there that logged in. So it's not really necessary anyway, because you can just open the doors from this interface, but it's just one of those things where it never ceases to amaze me what people hook up to the internet and what you can get access to. So that is in the controllers. And I came up with a few scripts that were based on Brad. I'd never heard him pronounce his last name. Is Brad in here from McAfee, does RFID hacking? And Tanowicz? Yeah, I'd butcher his last name. But basically, Brad, and when I get into it, you'll see some links to his research, has done a lot with attacking readers and controllers. And he had one script that went out and can query them and get the exact version of the controllers, and one at a time. And I'll be releasing on our GitHub a few random RFID hacking scripts for things like that. So being able to feed a list of a couple hundred IPs to the script, and it can go out and actually query it and figure out what kind of controller it is, what's its version, and things like that. These are just some of the stats from me just messing around for like an hour. So so that's a quick preview on the reader and controller front. But getting back to the traditional type of attacks that we covered in the last talk with the low-frequency RFID hacking, you get to our base methodology, which is still extremely effective of, if you want to break into a building, if you're looking at physical security systems that are RFID-based, you got 3 simple steps of, first, you want to steal somebody's badge information. Second, you want to create a copy of it. And then third, you go and break in, and to minimize the amount of time that you are a trespasser, you want to plan a back door so that you can get out as quickly as possible and maintain your presence. We've seen before, I hooked it up for the low frequency, the hit procs and the dollar proc stuff. Some of you guys might have seen this, but this is the I-Class R90 long-range reader. which without any modification at all, if you already have a TASTIC RFID thief circuit board, you could just hook it right up to this I-class long-range reader and still accomplish that type of attack for most people out there. And cloning, and I'll get into a little more details about it, but there's a number of cloners that have come out based on some of the vulnerabilities in I-class, and the quickest and easiest that I've come across is the one that you buy from China. It's funny, in trying to, I mean, this is like by far the easiest, like just point and click, making clone copies of high frequency I-class cards. But he's like, you have to do a bank transfer to China, and he had all these requirements and stuff like that, which could turn some of you guys off to wanting to do it. I was getting some weird looks in the office when I was like, how do I transfer to China this amount? And people's ears were perking up. But I ended up just sending the guy the money via PayPal, even though he didn't say that was an option, and he sent me the thing anyway. So FYI, if that was what was stopping you, just send it to him via PayPal, and I'll hook you up with it. So we got the step 1, steal the badge information for a high frequency system. Step 2, make a clone copy of an I-class card. And step 3, and I'll be releasing this on our Thingiverse page. How many of you guys are familiar with the Pwn plug? I would imagine most people. How many of you are familiar with the Power Pwn version? So the Power Pwn version is like a power strip instead of just a plug, and it costs like a couple grand, and I think it's discontinued now, but it's pretty awesome. But even when you can get it, it's like $2,000. So I finished the designs, and they'll be out there. My printer broke after printing the bottom half. It's going to be 2 halves, but basically I created the 3D prints top and bottom half to create a custom case for a Raspberry Pi that's like the Power Pwn. So you can buy a $35 Raspberry Pi, print out the 2 halves of this 3D file that y'all throw up on Thingiverse, and that's our Bishop Fox Thingiverse, and go down to Home Depot and just grab a standard plug, and you can have a $2,000 Power Pwn for like $40. Yeah. So that should be up. And most of the stuff will either be up later today on our various sites, or by the end of tomorrow at the very latest. So either go to our main website. All the stuff's always free. All of our tools, our research are all free. The website's the best place to go, and that'll link you to either our GitHub or our Thingiverse for 3D prints, our YouTube for tutorial videos and stuff like that. So you got step 1, 2, and 3 for a high frequency system. How many of you guys have been watching Mr. Robot? It's freaking awesome, right? It's unbelievably awesome. How many of you guys saw the episode where he used the TASTIC RFID thief? Basically, if you look at their plan for taking down Evil Corp, it was 3 steps that they basically had. And I figured I could show you guys. I got a couple videos here. So first, just a quick, let's see what it looks like stealing. So just an I-class card, and just with the normal TASTIC RFID circuit board, it goes ahead and grabs it and stores it and gives you everything that you need. I don't know if you'd see it there. I'll blow it up later. I don't have time. But basically, it's card number 14569. So, I mean, pretty simple, and then you just go make a fake copy of the card, right? It's not that impressive. I mean, it is, but it's not as impressive as, say, Christian Slater doing it. Like, my mom and dad get it now. They're like, oh, that's what you were talking about. Like, never watched any of my Black Hat or DEF CON talks, but, like, Christian Slater's got their attention on USA. So, yeah, I could have put together a demonstration video, but they did it for me. So step 1, go into Starbucks, walk by somebody with your TASTIC RFID thief either a weaponized version of the I-Class or HitProx or whatever technology.
I want to pay my respects.
Christian Slater's not even slick at all doing this either. He's like,
I just want to pay my compliments. Hey, excellent coffee, fantastic service. Buy yourself something nice.
Step 2. Make a clone version of the card.
Steel Mountain. We're trying to penetrate a data security facility whose tagline literally is,
you're going to ask to speak to his
And then step 3.
supervisor, Wendy. She'll get us to exactly where we need to be. Then we'll be able to get rid of her from the van. After that, you connect the Raspberry Pi to the climate control system, and Bob's your uncle.
Step 3, plant a back door. So basically the plan for taking down Evil Corp was the step 1, step 2, step 3 from the last dog, which is pretty awesome. But it's simple, but it's pretty effective. In case you don't want to, I mean, they're not too slick. I think he's got caught a couple times doing stuff. If you don't want to sit there and try to pull together and pull out of the wall somebody's thermostat and mess with it, basically, instead of doing that, this is just your easy way of this will just be your easy way to go ahead and drop something instead of trying to pull the whole wall apart. But basically, the end result is the same, trying to plant a Raspberry Pi as a permanent presence on their internal network. Cool. So that's just a quick brief over some of the newer things that we are releasing or just released so far. So what am I talking about here? In the talk I gave in 2013, that's strictly just focused on low frequency RFID hacking. And it's always great when one of these articles come out, and it's for getting long distance on the low frequency is pretty hard to do. You can only get a couple feet, and most people want to post links to. That's not a big deal at all. Here's an antenna, and it's an antenna for like UHF or something completely different. So there's a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of myths and a lot of room for confusion when it comes to RFID hacking. In fact, I mean, I was pretty dedicated, and it took me a while to get to the most basic answers that I would want for myself for most of these things. So I could understand most people's confusion when it comes down to it. And basically, you're looking at 3 major branches of RFID. We covered the low frequency before, which is mainly physical security systems, and it's the completely grossly insecure stuff that most people still today use. And if you have an RFID card on you, which it probably is. But with this talk, I wanted to extend into the high frequency and ultra high frequency aspects of it. Both the newer physical security systems that use high frequency, as well as various other things that are basically blowing up all over the place. Just some examples. RFID is in everything. It's kind of scary. I mean, it's all over the place now with the Internet of Things, and everything's connected. Basically, everybody's talking to everybody. So from your credit cards to your Disney fast passes, to your green cards, to your passports, to some people are just putting them in their hand to open doors like they're Darth Vader or something. Who would? I don't know who would do it. I mean, it looks cool, but that's got to be, yeah. To hospitals, or especially, which is kind of scary. I just noticed in the airport on the way here. I mean, the vending machines are all RFID based. Mobile payment systems are NFC, and NFC is basically high frequency, same frequency as high frequency. I'm even seeing like weird things. Somebody in my company found a secured hard drive, which you see there in the top row, second from the left, that basically to utilize the external hard drive, you have to have an RFID badge near it for it to unlock it. So you're starting to see in all kinds of weird applications. Enhanced driver's licenses. How many people's hotel room key, while they were in Vegas, was RFID? You're starting to see more and more have them, especially in Vegas. But I imagine in a couple years from now, most hotel keys are going to be RFID based. So these types of attacks are only becoming more and more useful. So this is a basic physical security setup in terms of how things flow. Whether it's credit cards or somebody's physical security system or your Coke rewards. How many people use Coke rewards? Or my Coke rewards now? Any? Nobody? Pepsi crowd, huh? All right. Good to know. But basically what we're looking at, somebody's carrying around something with them, whether it's their phone or a badge or a tag or their Obi-Wan Kenobi hand implant, and it can talk to a reader of some kind. And the type of attacks are going to be similar, just different approaches. So we might want to walk by somebody and skim it off them without their knowing, like Christian Slater did, with his backpack, and then make a copy of theirs. We might want to do things like directly attack the readers or controllers and not even worry about getting a valid badge at all, but just go right to the source. We want to do things like make fake copies of badges, have devices that can emulate badges themselves, so you don't have to make a fake copy. It can pretend to be a type of technology. You have some pretty interesting things like relay attacks, which we see in which case if as things start to escalate and more RFID-based systems are doing mutual authentication and things like that, you basically have the circumstance of you got two guys involved in it. One guy's standing at the door or the payment system or whatever with his device, and another guy's following you behind you, and basically it just starts passing the information back and forth, relaying it. So relay attacks. And we're starting to see more and more of these things as people are locking down the actual badges, whether they have. We're going to see some pretty fly gear when we get to the defensive section here at the end, like RFID blocking skinny jeans, which are getting popular. And who here has RFID blocking skinny jeans? Yeah, they're coming. Yeah, your kids are going to love it. But as people start to do stuff like that, and the badge gets harder to copy and clone and steal, then people are going to start moving along to these different types of attacks. Maybe we can't steal a badge. Can we brute force badges? Can we guess? If we know one badge number, can we guess the next values? Can we predict? If I bought one Disney ticket that was an RFID badge, can I predict what the next 3 sold are? Can you predict values? So, I mean, no matter what the uses are getting diverse and crazy, but the types of thought process and things that you want to do to them, or how you'll come about attacking them, are pretty much the same across the board. So, as I get into a few attack types, I'll show some other gear, but I'd like to basically give you the gist of, for each type of technology, what are the main types of attacks you'd want to try, the things you'd want to perform, and what are the main tools that you'd want to use, because there's a lot of noise out there. And I basically brought this up in my last talk. For years, due to good reasons, during kind of the heyday of RFID hacking, you could read 1 million articles about certain tools, and this tool did this and all these things, and you find 100 articles about something that doesn't exist. And it never got released. All there is a photo of it on the internet. And you're trying to find you're trying to do a penetration test. You're trying to find an actual tool that can help you right now. And you got to the first 500 Google hits are all to referring to a tool that was never publicly released. So it's a lot to sort through. These are some of the ones I covered before. You got the custom long-range readers, so taking that circuit board and plugging it into a long-range reader for either HID procs or Indala procs or iClass, which we just saw there. You got programmable cards. These are some of the ones I covered in my last talk, so I don't want to go over them too much. Some of the stuff that works with the RFIDiggity scripts, the RFIDs stuff in the middle there, those things are great. Most people aren't aware of those. They're not really a security tool. They are a troubleshooting tool for engineers in the field for RFID stuff, but it's just 2 USB sticks, one high frequency, one low frequency, that if you have a card that doesn't have any physical indications as to what type of technology it is, you don't know what type of card it is, you could use these things to quickly find out what type of card something is, which is extremely useful. So getting into the high frequency stuff, some of the must-have tools. Does it look a little blurry? Yeah, anybody? A little blurry? Oh. So some of the stuff you'll want to have in your toolkit are, one, how many people have the Proxmark 3? Proxmark's like one of the main tools that you get, but basically making sure that you have the high frequency antenna to use that for some of its tools. The one on the bottom left there, this is basically like your Swiss Army knife of high frequency hacking. For using that iClass cloner that I referenced there, that works with this reader. You could use this reader to read credit cards. You could use this reader for all sorts of things. People have got it working with Kali, Linux, and it's kind of like your number one tool to interact with almost every type of high frequency card. In the top right there, you got a nice little USB stick that works with libNFC. If you're going to do some NFC hacking, there's not a lot of hardware that actually works with it. So if you want to use some libNFC tools, that little USB stick is a good one. We've seen in the last year or two, there's been an explosion of great mobile platforms for doing penetration testing. How many people here have done a wireless pen test before, where you had to carry around the big laptop and the big Yagi, and you're walking around like this, and it's until 3 years ago that was still pretty much the standard, and people are like, what are you looking for? Nobody like it's a nerd detector. But it's been great. In the last couple of years, you've seen the Pony Express that do the Pwn plug released the Pwn Pad, which is an Android Nexus 7 with their custom image already on it, with a lot of pen testing tools, including some RFID hacking tools, wireless tools, Bluetooth tools. Even more recent, and I think even less people probably know, how many of you guys have heard of Kali's Net Hunter? Decent amount, maybe 10% of the crowd or something. It's relatively new. I think it's probably less than a year old. But basically, Kali released some images for some various Android tablets that you could just load onto the Nexus 7 or Nexus 10 there, and it's Kali Linux on an Android phone. So things are finally getting good, and you can see how this is appealing from a RFID hacking standpoint, where you're physically trying to break into a site, you're physically at Starbucks like Christian Slater, trying to pull a move, to have small portable devices that are actually highly functional. This is, it's a good step in the right direction. Also, the Proxmark, which I mentioned, there's again the slides have a number of references to all these blog posts on people that have put this together for how to run the Proxmark from your Android phone or something like that. So if you're using that to make your fake copies, you could just pull out your phone, connect it, and it's a little more convenient than carrying around the big laptop. Cool. I mentioned before the Proxmark. This is just a set of some of the commands in terms of high frequency. Just give you an overview. These things, the Proxmark's like a Swiss Army knife of it can read cards, simulate cards, clone cards, emulate cards. Has a high frequency and low frequency antenna. Basically, it could do anything. Its one limitation has always been distance, which is why we came up with the Tastic RFID Thief, to be able to steal somebody's badge from further away. But that's pretty much one of its only limitations. It can pretty much do everything. It's just some of the overview of the high frequency commands. The RFID scripts from Adam Laurie. always update it. It's a library of Python scripts for doing various RFID hacking things, and it comes loaded with Kali Linux. So if you want to get up and running really quickly, you could just download the Kali Linux VM image and get some hardware that works with it and be up and running extremely quickly. And the readers, which I mentioned, the RFID tools, which you could use to scan to figure out, this is my card for work, or this is my card for my parking lot of my apartment, or something like. It doesn't have anything on it that will let me know what type of technology it is. You could just use these with no software to figure out what type of technology it is, so that you can then steal it, make a fake copy, and give free parking at your university to all your friends, or or whatever you want to do, type of thing. That's what it's good for. So, just getting into some of the stuff that we covered. Again, with a lot of these things, and especially with the high frequency stuff, it's getting harder. The I-class, there was a reader that I showed, but it's again coming back to one of the biggest limitations is getting distance. Even as people come up with ways of breaking some of these technologies, what we've always seen is, oh my God, this is so broken, and makes all the headlines, and it ends up being that you have to get within a centimeter or two to actually steal somebody's badge information. It always is kind of glossed over, which is, for those who've seen my talk before, I refer to as the ass-grabbing method of RFID hacking. This is from a lot of slides, videos, presentations. Like, it's always like, this technology is so broken. Look how easy it is to steal somebody's information. It's like, okay, yeah, you can actually read it and clone it and all, but distance is always a problem, and it makes it what's really a risk, what's really practical that you need to worry about versus something that is they're probably you got, if Jonathan West Hughes there, the creator of the Proxmark, in the corner is walking around your campus, grab-assing you, you're going to catch him. It's not really that big of a risk. So we have these circuit boards that we saw earlier that weaponize existing RFID readers. Some of the early problems that the tools that got talked about, there's a million things for. Some of the main reasons they never got released were due to being threatened with basically patent disputes. Like, oh, you created a reader that reads these cards to steal them, that reads this type of card. Well, we have a patent on a device that reads these cards. You can't create a reader of your own. And that's what kind of stifled a lot of the release of the tools from 2007 to only a couple of years ago. So with this circuit board, you're not creating a reader of your own. You're weaponizing an existing reader. You're just tapping into the output of an existing reader. It's kind of how we got around that, and we're able to build tools that are actually practical for penetration tests. And what we're seeing here is, basically you could put it looks like that's my sketch of Christian Slater walking with his backpack. And then basically I designed this thing to just easily plug into any reader to weaponize it, and it just taps into the output of the reader of any badge that it reads, what the badge value is. And I created it for only one reader to begin with, but now it plugs in the high frequency readers. It's still applicable, and basically I just changed it now to be a backdoor device that you could plug in and interpret the results of readers as well. So, and basically the circuit board's still pretty effective, and it just takes in power, takes in the output of the reader, and outputs it to an SD card and to the screen. And for the newer version, it just outputs it over Bluetooth to your phone. And what we're looking at here is what it's tapping into, this main Wiegand output of any reader that reads a badge for the most part when it comes to physical security, takes it, interprets it, and sends it to a controller, like we saw over the internet, all those controllers. And it's just data 1 and data 0, just green and white wires for sending 1s and 0s for badge value. And that's just what we're tapping into. I mentioned here, now I'm thinking about this. HID Global is the #1. They are like a monopoly of physical security when it comes to RFID. And They basically have like 4 major product families of RFID that they have. They have 2 low frequency and 2 high frequency. Now there's more than this, but for the most part, it's these 4 major families of technology. And we have hit procs and dollar procs for the low frequency, and I-class and MyFair DesFire for the high frequency. Basically, they've released long-range readers for 3 out of 4 of their product families there. So we were able to weaponize 3 out of 4 and have long-range readers, and basically could do the Mr. Robot attack for 3 out of the major 4 product families of RFID were covered. So that whole long-range problem is solved for those 3. Unfortunately, they don't have a long-range commercial MyFair DesFire reader to weaponize. So that's, you know, we'll have to wait for them to come out with something like that to weaponize it to avoid patent issues. And I showed you guys the RFIDuino, which is awesome. But in terms of extending the functionality of these things, there's a million Bluetooth devices, as well as, I don't know if you guys have seen, Adafruit has probably the smallest cell phone add-on, basically, that I've seen yet. They're normally pretty bulky to do, basically send you the cards that it finds over, you know, send you a text message with every card that it finds. So as these devices are getting smaller and easier to use, I mean, now you don't have to create it yourself. Like the RFIDuino was, hey, let's make a smaller version that has Bluetooth already on it. Each week, it's getting easier and easier to just buy something that just works for a lot of these types of attacks. Again, this is the one that we saw in the beginning. This is the HIT I-Class R90 long-range reader. Most of these you could buy on eBay for a couple $100, and just plug and play with the circuit board. So basically, getting into high-frequency hacking for physical access control systems, you have the MyFair DesFire and the I-Class 2 product families of high-frequency physical security systems for the most part. And there's a lot of research on this, so I won't go into too much. But basically, for I-Class, the big problem that they had was the security was completely based on people not knowing what a certain key value was, keeping a secret value. And somebody was able to dump the firmware of a reader, extract the secret key from it, and then it was just game over. And then it just made it possible to do all the same types of attacks that we saw before with the step 1 and step 2 and step 3, just because of that. Again, this for like $200, you can just get order from xfpga.com, this I-Class cloner. Just send it money over PayPal, even though it doesn't say it, and it's the easiest by far to just point and click, make a copy of an I-Class card. This guy's done a lot of work to prevent reverse engineering of his tool. You know, and he put a lot of restrictions on it. I would say it doesn't allow, you can't attach a debugger to it. It doesn't run in a VM by default, which sucks because if you wanted to, it has a physical USB dongle for licensing. This guy's pretty hardcore with protecting his product. Which if you have, you know, if you want to share it with people in your company, you don't have to physically pass around a laptop with, you know, this cloner on it or ship it out to somebody if you're doing a pen test. It's kind of a problem. But I have in there, there's a couple, there's basically one VMware setting that you could set to get around being able to do it in a VM. And it's the thing that killed me is, it has to be for, it's using an older version of software, and it's 32-bit, and it won't run on Windows 64-bit, and it won't run on a VM either. So I had to go physically get a different laptop to be able to use the tool, because I had to get a 32-bit system, until I figured out there's just one setting of VMware to get around it, which are in my notes. So if you guys buy this, and just, you know, you can check it out so you can run it in VM. And it's kind of funny that he went to all that trouble, because actually all it is basically an older version of HID's contactless demo application that came with their API, an older version of it. He basically just copied this demo code from HID Global, and then just altered it. And if you just looked at his executable, it still said contactless demo vc.exe in his his actual executable. So he basically just copied it anyway of somebody else. So I don't feel so bad about breaking his VMware thing now. The guy from XFPGA, you're not in the crowd, are you? Yeah, good, okay, good. Fingerprint reader, there's some newer stuff now, but that's basically just come out, but for the most part, it's pretty ridiculous. The threat is, okay, Christian Slater's walking by you in Starbucks, and he picks up your card value. Now that you have everything you need to break into Evil Corp, impenetrable, right? So by adding biometrics and fingerprint and PIN, at least I can't walk by you in Starbucks and get everything I need. He didn't know what his PIN is, if that's what it had. He didn't have his fingerprint yet. So you can't, it makes it harder to execute that type of attack, except for the fact, this came from Proxclone. He didn't release tools to do this, but you can basically piece it together from his white paper. Basically, by default, this bio class, the I class biometric stuff, it basically, when you put your finger down, it just validates that your fingerprint that's right on there right now is the same fingerprint that's on the card. So, like, say Christian Slater took that guy's thing and it came up and it had that, Christian Slater would make a copy with that guy's card value that he stole, but with Christian Slater's fingerprint and Christian Slater's favorite PIN number, and it only validates it as the same on the card. So it completely makes it, useless. So if you get one of these readers, you can create your own PIN and take your own fingerprint and have those values, and then use some of those cloning tools like the XFPGA when you're making a fake copy to write your values for your fingerprint when you're doing it as well. So completely getting by most of that. And this white paper is listed there, has the exact values and where you would do that. Although biometrics in general, is Dan Petro in here? Dan the man. Dan has a lot of funny things to say about biometrics, but they really shouldn't be used in general when it comes to physical security, things like that. It's like a password that you could never change and that you leave behind on everything that you touch. You can't revoke it. It's the worst ever. You can't hash the values of those passwords because, fingerprints aren't exact. So there has to be some fudge factor. And because of that, you can't, hash them to somebody. You have to keep them in readable format. They're just terrible in general when it comes to, trying to physically secure something. So reader and controller attacks. So fortunately, those guys came up with that I-class hack to make some of these traditional attacks against the cards still extremely viable. But I gave you guys a preview. That Brad Antanovich that I mentioned, I'll have his thing here in a second. He's come up with some pretty cool tools, and I released a few as well on if once your kids all start rocking the RFID blocking skinny jeans, and there's nothing you could do anymore, from that attack vector. You have to start going after the actual readers and popping the lids off them. People mention this one all the time, the Gecko from Zach Franken, and he basically, unless you're friends with him and he let you borrow it, it's not very much use to you. It never got released, but it was one of the first concepts of this backdoor device to implant and do replays as well. So not only is it recording the values that it sees, but you could walk up with your phone and say, hey, instead of the reader sending the controller a valid badge value, you just send one of the valid badge values you know about to the controller directly, and it opens the door for you. So it's like, one of those, smart home locks, but for, you're not supposed to have access to it. You can open up doors without having a badge. So Zach Franken kind of talked about these and created his own. And I just saw at this past Black Hat, these guys came up with the BLE key, which is basically similar functionality as well. Extremely small. You could just plant it into a reader at a target facility. It sits there and collects the information. You can come up with Bluetooth and via your phone, dump all the list of values that it's seen so far, as well as open the door by replaying some of those values. Did someone say the BLE guys in here? It's pretty cool. So this just came out a couple days ago. You can see how small it is there. Kind of covered these, our Arduino. So that's attacking the reader, basically. You're coming up in the middle of the night, you're popping the lid off the reader, you're putting something in there or tampering with it in some way. The reader talks to the controller, which makes all the access decisions. So going after the controller, basically that's Brad's, one of his talks that he released these things on his GitHub. And basically a number of Arduino tools to basically do brute forcing to the controller. So instead of doing it over the air like the prox brute, going up to the reader, physically plugging in and brute forcing values, which is like 5 times faster, as well as a backdoor device of his own. And here's a few of them. But basically, being able to brute force, do the skimmer and emulator, which is similar to the BLE key and things that we mentioned. As well as a number of scripts to, if you have access to it, just open all the doors or dump out the cache of the controller and all these things. Basically, if you have network access to the controller at all, it's just game over for physical security. There are a number of other tools. HID released some tools for scanning to identify these things on the network. How many people here are physical security for a company? 2, 3. So you guys are just all pen testers. Nobody here is just trying to figure out how to actually defend against these things. So, I mean, when you look at these things, most physical security people I know are ex-cops. They didn't come from an IT background. I mean, they're ex-cops. It's typically things that are products that are purchased outside of the traditional IT purchasing infrastructure. You know, you got IT buys and gets licenses for everything except for these physical security guys are picking out these technologies and running with them. And almost invariably, even though these networks are not supposed to be hooked up to any corporate network, the physical security networks, you shouldn't be able to be sitting in a cube and, you know, ping the badge reader at the front door. But these guys are sitting in a shack all night, you know, watching cameras. They want to check out what's going on with their, you know, their fantasy football stats. You know, they want to browse the web. Like, they're sitting in a shack. They're on the network that is the physical network. Every single time they end up getting bridged in some way because of that. Otherwise, like, all I can look at is the camera and the badges. Like, I'm sitting here in the shack all night. I'm going to check, you know, what my team's doing. So eventually these things, that's how they end up on the internet. That's how, like, when Shodan, you find a few hundred buildings that are open on the internet, that's how that happens. And they're getting easier to find because you have these tools, like this discovery tool that goes out in the network and finds them. They have their own querying language, as well as HID Global was nice enough to go ahead and register their MAC address. So basically, if you scan a bunch of devices, you can identify any physical security device on the network if it begins with 0006 80, which makes it nice. So as people do these, like, you know, mass scanning projects of the internet, and more huge data repositories of every single device on the internet, and querying them, it makes it a lot easier to go ahead and sort through them to find physical security devices. That's what you're looking for. Again, root pass. If you have access to it, telnet, web, just log them at root pass. It's going to be root pass. They can't change it for any of the major ones. You can, at that point, you can open all the doors, close all the doors, do whatever you want, dump badge values. So this is just some of the, for those of you who hadn't seen the PowerPone before, this is the PowerPone, which is, slides old, it was $2,000 before the end there, which now you get a free version. There's, you can download the Kali Linux Raspberry Pi image, as well as Pony Express's Raspberry Pone. There's links to a number of good things here. So basically, you just get a Raspberry Pi, download the SD card image for one of these, basically Pone plug type images, and 3D print the files that we'll have up on our site. And for like $40, you're good to go with your own realistic looking backdoor, so you don't have to be like Mr. Robot and pull the wall apart and do all that stuff. And putting together, you guys have seen the Nintastic 3D print, the Nintendo one? Basically, I just altered that. But this is like the longest thing I've ever printed. So I was like, I had to put those like discs on them to keep them from curling up. If you're wondering what those discs are, they just snap off. But when you build something really long, the pressure kind of bows. But it's all taken care of. You just download it and print. What are we doing on time? Cool. Getting close on time here. In doing this kind of stuff, push these to the end, credit cards, because quite frankly, I mean, the first question any reporter asks for this type of thing is, so tell me about mobile payment systems, tell me about credit cards and RFID. It's the first question everybody asks. In all honesty, I mean, they're pretty locked down. It's probably like the least sexy RFID hacking that there is. There's really not a lot you can do to get over on the credit card companies. And it's interesting, and I'm always like, have Google alerts going, and you'll see some news article about critical vulnerability found in Apple Pay. And, and these researchers did this, and then you're reading through it, and you get 5 paragraphs in. And I just was reading this one, and it was basically people set up a rogue wireless access point and redirected their web browser traffic and said, please enter your credit card number. And it was for an iPhone. So they're like, so that was the headline read like Apple Pay, vulnerability, all this stuff, and it had nothing to do with it whatsoever. And people were kind of stretching for that. The credit card companies, there's basically not a lot you could do. There's a good blog there. It's highlighted the actual URL from Brad, who went through and analyzed what's on your card versus what's on it. The two best resources are that blog post there, as well as Kristen Pageant's talk on credit card fraud. If you read that one blog post and watch that one talk, it's pretty much gives you the best overall view of credit card hacking. And for the most part, there's things like dynamic CVV, and so if you're going to order a pizza and you put in your credit card number, your name, the expiration date, and your security code, when you're doing RFID, the security code is different every single time, and the credit card companies know what those values are going to be in order. So if I walked by you and I skimmed your badge value, and every transaction I have to walk by you 4 times if I wanted to charge to your credit card 4 times, because I'd have to get the next 4 security codes. And then if you went and bought pizza or something with RFID before I did that, now you've presented a newer version of it, and I go present an old version, and they're locked down. Like your card just gets locked down. There's like not a lot you could do, so it's not really sexy. Passports and travel documents in general, there's a million tools for dumping out all the information on those. What's even scarier really is the ultra high frequency stuff, which are so you have passport books and you have passport cards. And the books are high frequency and the cards are ultra high frequency. And green cards are ultra high frequency, a lot of travel documents, 1 minute. And basically they serve no practical purpose except for human behavior, pattern establishment, pattern of life establishment, tracking what aisle in Walgreens you went up and went down, where you went throughout the city. You can track them from miles away. Putting it in your enhanced driver's license, something you can't destroy because it's a federal ID, something you have on your person at all times. They could track wherever you're going. That's the only real purpose that it serves. It's ridiculous. And it has no security to it whatsoever. I mean, anybody could it's just a 96-bit value. And we see here, this is a tool you could use, pretty cheap to read and clone. They're also using ski passes. We made some copies of my buddy's ski pass, so you can just put in your helmet and go and go to the ski lodge, and that's how they read you. And it's just, if you can read it at all from several miles away, you could just read and copy. And I made a copy of my buddy's green card too, because anyone's looking for green card. Got it. So defenses, you guys could read about these slides later. Here's the skinny jeans, and even blazers now, RFID blocking blazers for the the business person on the go. But you guys can check out this, and thanks everybody. Okay, the email is, are you ready for this? For the tastic backdoor devices, backdoorlover@bishopfox.com. Backdoorlover@bishopfox.com. All one word. And go. I'm going to be writing you guys love letters for the next couple of years as well, but you will also get a circuit board.